This is immigration attorney Parviz Malakouti. I got a call yesterday from a prospective client asking me a question that I get a lot, which is what exactly happens at a naturalization interview? And I'm going to answer that question in this video. So first of all, you've applied for the naturalization using the N400 application for naturalization. If everything has gone well with the application so far, several months after applying, you get an interview notice, okay? And the interview notice asks you to show up at a USCIS office at a particular day, at a particular time, and usually bringing certain documents with you related to the application. So you show up at the USCIS office. If you're represented by an attorney, your attorney shows up with you as well. Hopefully he or she has prepared you as well before the interview. You go into a waiting room and basically you check in and then you wait to be called. And then you get called into a individual small room with a USCIS officer with your attorney. The attorney does come in with you. The attorney is entitled to sit next to you in the room. And usually these rooms are really cramped, but it's usually enough for three people. So the officer, you, and your attorney. The attorney's role there is to keep quiet unless something starts going wrong. You have to answer the questions as the applicant. So this is not like being in court where you sit there and the attorney would speak on your behalf. You do have to answer the questions. So in the interview, there are four primary parts. The first is the English competency exam. The second is the civics test. The third is answering all the questions on the naturalization application. And the fourth is answering any other questions that the USCIS officer might have. So first of all, for the English competency exam, it's usually very, very easy. The USCIS officer will give you a task. For example, they might say, write this down on a piece of paper and then give you a sentence verbally, or the opposite. They may give you a piece of paper with a sentence on it and ask you to read the sentence. Generally, if you can communicate in English, you should have no problem with the English competency exam. The civics test is also pretty easy, I consider. You have to answer at least 6 out of 10 questions correct. Those 10 questions about American history, politics, etc., are drawn from a pool of only 100 questions. So you just have to study all of the 100 questions. Most clients that I've had answer every single one correctly in the interview because they're easy. I mean, these are questions like, who's the vice president? Now, the part that is not necessarily more tricky, but the part that you should focus on more is answering the questions on the naturalization application and making corrections. So what happens is the USCIS officer will go over the questions from the application that was already submitted one by one and ask you to answer it and ask if you want to make any changes. If you decide, if you figured out that you made a mistake when you submitted the application, you can change the answer at the interview, and you should change it at the interview, or the lawyer should help you at the interview change that answer. So you go through, you answer all those questions, and then the fourth part is answering any other questions that the USCIS officer might have. Now, they can't ask you about, they're not supposed to at least ask you about anything under the sun. It should be related to the naturalization application, perhaps maybe your green card, your legal permanent resident application that came before that. But really, this is where the lawyer, quote unquote, earns his worth or her worth, which is basically making sure that the interview doesn't go off the rails with the USCIS officer asking questions that are either inappropriate or outside of the scope of what should be asked. So that's what happens in the interview. If all goes well, do you become a citizen at the interview? And the answer is no. Okay, if all goes perfectly, you get a sheet that's called the interview results of interview. And that basically, the most you can get is to be recommended for approval. What happens is you leave with that. If you got recommended for approval, it's all but certain, not always, but very, very, very likely that you are going to be approved. And then you get sent a letter in the mail asking you to come to an oath ceremony, okay? The oath ceremonies are usually a couple weeks, maybe maximum a month and a half out. You go to the oath ceremony, you take your oath, and in that moment, you get your naturalization certificate and become a U.S. citizen. So that's it. I hope that helped. If you have any questions about this process or something else, feel free to mention it in the comments. If you have any thoughts about this video or about the process, by all means, make a comment. Thank you.